It is nearly here. Big noon kickoff is in town. We've got Gus Johnson. We've got Joel Klatt. We got the BYU Cougars hosting the Arizona Wildcats on a homecoming weekend. What is going to take place at LaVell Edwards Stadium? Well, stay tuned and find out.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day, and appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Go to place your first $5 bet, and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed, courtesy of your friends at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to learn more now. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. It is BYU. It is the Arizona Wildcats. It is homecoming weekend in Provo, Utah. I was making the drive back north yesterday from the Black Desert Championship down in St. George. Yes, I made an 8-hour round-trip drive for about 10 hours on the course, but as I was driving home, I saw the Y all lit up on the side of the mountain over there. Really cool to see that. It's a fun time, obviously, a whole lot going on, but it got even more hectic with the fact that Big Noon Kickoff is here, and we also got the tandem of Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt calling this game. The biggest thing about this matchup is that BYU has got a better chance than I ever thought possible when some news came out on the injury front for Arizona. Now, obviously, when it comes to football, it's a violent game. And any of you who are BYU fans, you know exactly how much injuries can impact how a team performs. We all saw that a season ago when BYU slumped to that 5-7 record. Injuries really took hold midway through that season, and it really fell off down the stretch. Well, this week, BYU is getting some good news due to the fact that LJ Martin, Sione Aimoa, etc. should be available. So BYU should be near full strength in their offensive backfield with the full complement of running backs. Connor Pay, Cody Epps not expected to play in this one, but BYU is relatively healthy as compared to what we have learned about Arizona. Gunnar Maldonado, one of the star defensive backs, he is out for the season. Tore his ACL in the first half of their win at Utah, speaking of Arizona. And then, I screwed that up. Traden Stukes, is out for the season due to that torn ACL, whereas Maldonado got an leg injury last week against Texas Tech, and he's expected to miss multiple weeks before he's able to return. These are two players that were very, very capable and downright just impactful players for Arizona a season ago, and they were expecting them to play a big role in this game. Does that mean BYU is going to be slinging it all over the field in this one? Maybe so. And obviously having two of their star defensive backs helps BYU's chances in this matchup. But I am not going to lay anything out there when it comes to expecting Arizona's defense not to be the swarming defense we have seen already this season. Dwayne Aquina, their defensive coordinator, he is a very, very accomplished coach. Kalani Sitake spoke glowingly of him earlier this week, and it sounds like they are fully expecting, speaking of BYU, for Arizona to attack them from all angles. I talked to Aaron Roderick. I asked him the question after practice on Wednesday and said, okay, in the second half, you said the Baylor really started bringing heat on you guys. You seem to struggle with that. Are you expecting that from Arizona? I said, yeah, I'm expecting that. So I think this is going to be an interesting one. How does BYU absorb that pressure? How do guys like Sonny Mocassini, who I'm expecting to start at center for BYU in this one in place of Connor Pay, how do they do holding up against this? The other big question about this BYU football program is, remember, BYU came off their bye a season ago and got absolutely boat raced by the TCU Horned Frogs. Josh Hoover was a man amongst men out there and was absolutely lighting BYU up in this one. Is it going to be a similar circumstance with what I consider to be a better quarterback, speaking of Noah Fafita, going up against BYU in this game? BYU's defense absolutely has to make life miserable for Noah Fafita. If they are unable to get him down, tackles for loss, sacks, pick him off, he does have 7 touchdowns against 6 interceptions this season, so not a great touchdown to interception ratio. But what he showed against Utah in particular in that upset win is an ability, if you do not get him to the ground or you don't force him into mistakes, he will carve you up. Obviously, having the tandem of him and Teteroa McMillan is deadly. It's a deadly combo because they have got an incredible ability essentially to read each other's minds. They've got an incredible chemistry on the field. I'm expecting BYU to bracket cover Teteroa McMillan. And what that means is I would expect a safety or a linebacker is always shading towards McMillan, no matter where he lines up on the field, while a cornerback, I would expect Jacob Robinson essentially goes man-to-man with him the entire game. Is that going to be enough to slow down a guy of his caliber? I hope so, because once again, as you heard from Mike Luke on yesterday's podcast, if you caught that, he called him the best receiver in the country. I'm not necessarily going to go that far because I do think that there's some other receivers out there, Travis Hunter, Ryan Williams among them, who are elite talents in their own right. But McMillan's right up there among the best, and he is going to make it very difficult for BYU's defense. This is going to be an interesting tit-for-tat battle here between BYU and Arizona, and the line has moved. Our friends at FanDuel have it around 4 points as of recording of this podcast because of those injuries in the defensive backfield for Arizona. But that does not mean that BYU can take this Arizona team lightly. I think Utah showed that this Arizona team, they are more than capable of coming to the Beehive State and knocking you off your perch. And they can do that in Salt Lake City. They definitely can do it in Provo, Utah. I don't mean anything negative by that. I'm just saying this is a team that's proven it can go on the road and win big games. So I look forward to this one. I think BYU needs as balanced an offense as they possibly can muster. Jake Retzloff has really shouldered a ton of the load for BYU offensively this season. With LJ Martin back, with Sione Iamoa back, I expect BYU to make a concerted effort to try and establish the run early in this game, and they should. If BYU can pass for, let's say, 250, speaking of 200 yards or 250 yards, and run for 150 yards, I think BYU is going to be well on their way to winning this one. But you cannot allow yourselves to become one-dimensional, and more importantly, you can't allow Arizona to dictate that and force you to be one-dimensional. I expect BYU to kind of force this game onto the arm of Noah Fafita, but more importantly, they're going to force him to throw it to people other than Teteroa and McMillan. Now, that doesn't mean that Arizona has incapable players in the passing game outside of him. I'm just saying when you have a guy at that caliber, you essentially take him away and say, okay, who else you got out there? Kean Burnett is their star tight end. He's a very, very good player. He caught the winning touchdown against Utah, if I recall correctly. But him, Montana Lamonius Craig, remember when Lamonius Craig was coming out in the transfer portal, BYU pursued him pretty hard. But Teteroa McMillan has 664 passing, receiving yards on the season. The next closest is Kean Burnett with 171 yards. So I think you take number 4, McMillan, out of this game, and you essentially but you force a guy like Noah Fafita to beat you with other guys. And if he can do that, props to him. But this is a very, very big game, obviously, because BYU is looking to go 6-0. Many of you heard what we had with Crew Wakely earlier this week on the podcast. Is the best part about being 5-0? You can go 6-0 here. It's going to be a very interesting game. The other thing about this is Arizona, I expect them to try and run the football as well. Quali Conley, 419 rushing yards on the year. He's obviously off to a good start, and I would expect a strong dose of him as well, because a strong rushing attack on the road can go a long way to helping you win a football game. So a lot to track in this one. Truly, a lot to track and a lot to break down. I'll have my official prediction for you guys here in just a little bit, but I welcome your guys' feedback. What do you guys think? What do you guys make of this matchup? Are you confident in BYU's ability? Are you feeling nervous about this one? I still can't shake the feeling that BYU as a team is very confident, as they should be. They're 5-0 on the season, and I think they are intent on showing that the bye week did not slow them down at all. But I also understand from the outside perspective, well, it's still been a quite shaky offense at times for this BYU Cougar team. Can they really rev it up and get it to the level they need it to be, it feels like, to compete at an elite level? That remains to be determined. I think we'll go a long way to learning a lot more about that come tomorrow evening when this one wraps up. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk with a guy I thought had a breakout performance against Baylor and is a very, very fun personality, John Taumoepeau. Now, Snow College transfer, walking on officially with the BYU football program. What does he expect to accomplish as one of BYU's emerging defensive tackles? We'll catch up with him and talk with him next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel's got the best app out there. It feels like, my friends. It's an incredible feature. If you want to get into the sports betting space, do it with our friends at FanDuel. The best part is right now, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel as they are America's #1 sports book. When you get the hunch in the middle of a game, I got a good feeling about the live odds in this one. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's all courtesy of FanDuel, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, by the way, when you place your first $5 bet. $200 bonus bets if you place a $5 bet. The ROI, absolutely incredible. So take advantage of it today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Put some money on this BYU Arizona game if you're so inclined. Go to FanDuel.com, place that bet today. $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets, all courtesy of FanDuel, as they are America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, you're listening to it on Apple Podcast, wherever. I do appreciate all of the patronage and your guys' support. All right, earlier this week, had a great opportunity to catch up with John Taumoepeau. Had a sack against Baylor 2 weeks ago. He's been working mainly with the second team of BYU's defensive line, but has become, I think, a key cog on the interior of BYU's D line, because I have been really impressed with his ability both pass rush and in run stopping, because he seems to be adept at both. The funny thing about this is, you will learn, is he was not trained to play defensive tackle his entire life. It's actually a more recent move for him. So without further ado, here's my conversation that I had with John Taumoepeau after practice earlier in the week. You're a guy who came from the junior college ranks, came to BYU.
Yes, sir.
Give me a sense of just how the transition has been as you make the transition to Power 4 football.
Oh, man, it's been great. I think me going to junior college has been a really good experience. Just coming from there and just going that route makes you a more hungry player. And I think coming over here, there is a lot to learn. You're going against the best of the best every day, and a lot of great competition coming in every day. So, it's a big change, but we love how I love the competitive, and I love everything that comes with it.
Now, your connection to BYU, as I understand it, was via Jan Jorgensen, who's now at New Mexico, because he coached you down at Snow and everything.
Yes, sir.
How big of a role did he play in you picking BYU?
Yeah, honestly, it was him and also my D-line coach, Coach Bua. When I came on my visit, loved them both. When I was down there at Snow, I was recruited by Jan to come to Snow. I played for him for 2 years, and then he left to BYU, and obviously then he picked me up. But just me coming on my visit, just being with those two coaches. My parents loved all the coaches, and once I found out Coach Jan left, I was a little sad. But this was the place I wanted to be, and I just stayed committed over here.
Now, I know you're a guy who's from Washington originally. Do you know much about BYU growing up?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. It was only Utah that I only heard of, but never heard of BYU when I was growing up. I was a big Oregon Ducks fan growing up.
Okay.
With Anthony Thomas and Marcus Mariota. I was just a kid loving that. So, I never really heard of any teams from Utah, but until I came out to Snow, and that's when I started knowing a lot about Utah.
Okay, you mentioned the fact you felt like BYU was the place for you. What sold you on BYU?
Oh, man, just the love, just the brotherhood and everything that came with it. When I came on my visit, it felt like a family atmosphere, It felt like a family environment where, the brotherhood from the coaches, they really care about you, and they want you to be the best person on and off the field. I think that was the biggest thing. And one of my first times during the springtime, we did a True Blue Hero, and never done anything like that, the True Blue Hero for the kids and everything and all that stuff. So, man, when I experienced that, I was like, this is a whole different school. No other football team is doing this, and no other football team is going out their way to make a big impact on other people's lives. So, it's just, I love this place, very competitive place, but also makes you a man on and off the field.
Well, we talked a lot about off the field, but I want to talk about on field with you. Against Baylor, we saw you get a sack in that game. Now, obviously, it came because of the intentional grounding, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
and everything.
Sir.
But Give me a sense of how you feel like your game's developed over time here.
Oh man, I think just the reps. I think just, the more practice I'm going at every day, the film study that we're going through every day, and just having the best coaches like Coach Anderson with Coach Puha. Man, they know a lot about the game and they've been playing the game a long time. So they're very two good mentors and the best mentors to learn from, So I think for me, just reps and learning from the older boys, just to slow down the game and, just take my time and I'll be able to be great at the game like I want to. So that was the biggest for me, is just I had to get more experience, more snaps, more reps for I can get used to the game, and I feel very comfortable right now,
Did you play defensive tackle at all before you came to BYU?
No, sir. I always played DN. I always played DN, but when I came to D1 football, I had to be real with myself, and if I want to go far in this game, I'm gonna make my bread and butter inside. So, yes, sir.
Do you bring, because obviously with that sack against Baylor, you can't show off your pass rush element. Do you still feel like you can still have that impact getting after the quarterback that way?
Yes, sir, I can. It has been a big impact going from outside pass rush like to inside, because you have more smaller space inside, So it is a lot to learn inside, but I've been watching a lot of film on great players like Byron Murphy, but I still think I can use my speed and my power to my advantage that I came from outside to inside. But I think I'm getting a hang of it real well. Against Baylor, I had a lot of good one-on-ones that I won and stuff, but that quarterback just kept on getting out quick. But very happy I got one that day.
Well, you talk about a quarterback who gets it out quick. Noah Fafita, very good quarterback, guy who likes to throw the ball really quick. He likes to process it very quickly.
Yeah.
What does that change for you guys on the D-line with a quarterback of his caliber?
I think, honestly, it doesn't really change anything for us. We know he's a pretty small quarterback, so our biggest game plan for the D-line going in this week is we just got to collapse the pocket, and then we got some big boys up front. We put our hands up. He's not going to have no throwing lanes, and he's a gap. So that's our plan for down the middle. We collapse the pocket. We make him go outside and stuff, and our ends will be there. Our spies will be there. So that's our game plan, just to shut him down as a thrower and stuff, just not being able to make him see, So the most important thing is just rushing to the backfield and also getting our hands up.
They've got a couple of guys, I think Savita Ney, if I pronounced his name correctly, on the offensive line that are projected NFL-type guys.
Yes,
how big of a challenge is that preparing for guys of that caliber?
Oh, man, I love it. Always growing up, always wanting to go against the best of the best. It's just, I feel like it makes me hungry. And especially our D tackle room, I feel like it should make all of us hungry. We get to prove to the world and everybody that's watching that game that we some real dudes on the D-line too, So it's going to be an exciting matchup. He's a very good player, looks very good on film, so it's going to be very fun going against him on Saturday afternoon.
I wanted to ask you about playing LaVell Edwards Stadium. I asked Crew Wakely about this, and he said, I had people, because before he played at Utah State before he got here, so people were telling him, playing at LaVell is like it's one of a kind. He said, I didn't believe it until I got in there. Did you have a similar type experience?
Oh man, that first game, it was a blessing. I think when we was running out the tunnel, I think my eyes were watering up. I was just, man, I was like, this is crazy. It was a sold out stadium, and I really found out what type of fan base it was the Kansas State game. Man, the Kansas State, from the Rock, from all the families, just it's a sold-out game, the whole crowd bumping, going crazy. Never heard anything like that before in my college. I think we won one of the 12th man in the country.
Last thing for me, I haven't asked you about this, because you're 5-0 to start this season.
Yes,
What's
sir.
the mindset of the team right now?
Man, the mindset of the team is honestly just working every day, We can't look ahead to the future. We can't look to the past. We got to look at every day as we got to work every day. We had a player meeting, and the biggest message in that meeting was 1-0 every week. 1-0 every week. So we just got to keep our heads low, we can't get too excited. We can't let any distractions get to us. We just got to keep working like they looked at us before the season started. So that's like our main message. We can't let any of this get to us. We still got to think we're an underdog team, and we're going to keep working every day and working every week, and that's our goal, 1-0 every week.
There you go, John Taumoepeau. I want a big thank you to him for taking the time. And yeah, this is a guy that I think his best football is ahead of him because, as he acknowledged, he was a defensive end growing up, like sacking the quarterback, but understood if he wanted to compete at a higher level and be a better player, and as he mentioned, live his dreams as a football player, needed to bulk up and move inside. And I think that his pass rush ability, it's shown itself. Obviously, that sack against Baylor, it was given to him, obviously, due to the fact that they had the, what do you call it, the intentional grounding call against Baylor in that game, but to sack all the same. And here's to many, many more for John and the rest of the BYU defensive line. But they've got a very tough job, as he acknowledged, keeping Noah Fifita in check. The other thing I think that guys like John Taumoepeau can offer for BYU is their taller bodies. And Noah Fifita is not the tallest quarterback out there. Get your arm up. Do exactly what John Nelson did to start that game against Baylor. Get a hand up, deflect that football, and hope one of your teammates comes down with it for an interception. I expect BYU's defensive line to obviously try and get after Fifita in the pass rush, but if they don't feel like they're getting very close and he's already ready to throw that football, get your hands up. Make those throwing lanes as minimal as possible and make it tough on him to see anything downfield. He knows where number 4 is. They seem to have a preternatural ability to connect no matter where they're at on the field, but you got to slow him down and force other guys to be the hero for Arizona. And it's going to be one of those back and forth affairs. What does Jay Hill have schemed up to attack this Arizona offense, and vice versa? What does Arizona have cooked up to take advantage of BYU's defense? And it's one of those chess battles. It's obviously going to be fun watching it play out Saturday afternoon. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we will flip over and talk some BYU basketball. Got 2 things you need to cover. I had a chance to watch the BYU scrimmage. I get some thoughts on that. We'll also talk about BYU and where they're placed in the Big 12 preseason poll. A little bit lower than many of you might have expected, but I don't think it's necessarily as low as what it feels like. And I'll try and explain that coming up next as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. Now, with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat at the financial favors of the 1%ers out there. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society types, and now the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal amount of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Sound too good to be true? Well, take advantage of it today, my friends. It's Robinhood Gold. It provides the privileges of a high net worth to any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for specific disclosures. Visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change, and gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. All right, we're also going to talk about a new friend here on the podcast. I know that a lot of you don't do this, but those of you who like to imbibe, I want you guys to check out what they have a new feature for you that like to take part, as it were, with ZBiotics. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by a PhD scientist to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Think about this. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct down. And just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow if you like to imbibe once again. Every time you go out, take advantage of this today if you are imbibing, and you guys can give it a shot today. So step 1, drink the pre-alcohol. The best part is number 2, drink responsibly. And then number 3, enjoy tomorrow. No hangover, feel refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. It's back 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, you'll get your money back. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off your order with our friends at ZBiotics. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. If you have not done so already, sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU by joining us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. A 14-day free trial. Best part is the updates I'm giving you guys. Everything I'm hearing about BYU sports comes in the form of a text message. It's not much more direct than that. So sign up today. That's the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Links are in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk BYU basketball for just a minute here. BYU had their blue and white scrimmage on Wednesday night. The biggest thing to me is I feel like BYU has a clear, what I would consider to be their starting five. Who are the five I'm thinking of? Well, number one, Jaeger Deming is Damon. I've given up on trying to pronounce his last name correctly. Every time I do it, I get a message from one of you guys. Hey, have you seen this? Have you seen it? Jaeger Damon, I think Damien, whatever it is. I think he is going to start for BYU. He has to start. His ability to be a 3-level scorer, to pass like he does, and to have the size that he has at 6'9", it is the total package. And there's a reason why this is a guy who's projected to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft next year. You can see it already, and it was very, very evident on Wednesday night. The other thing I saw is that Cannon Catchings, he is a walking bucket getter. You need guys like that in the Big 12. And the fact that he's 6'9", 6'10", whatever he is, him and Damien are going to be absolutely impossible to slow down for opposing teams, it feels like. Their size of their combination of size, their athletic ability, and more importantly, their ability to put it in the bucket. That's an incredible tandem to have on the wing or at point guard in the case of a guy like Jaeger is really, really nice to have. I still think that Dallin Hall ends up getting the start as well. I think that you can play him and Jaeger off one another. They can both play off ball, but more importantly, they can also initiate the offense. And in the front court, I'm interested to see how this goes because if it were me, I would start Richie Saunders, but I can understand that Mihailo Boskovic might be a guy that Kevin Young opts for because he plays with reckless abandon. You saw that on Wednesday night if you were watching this, or if you're listening to Greg Wrubell call the game as well. You could see or feel or hear or whatever you want to term it. That guy has got little conscience when it comes to hoisting it up. He tried to dunk on Keba Keita at one point, and that brings me to my 5-man. I think it's Keba Keita that starts for BYU at center. He is an incredible athlete. His athleticism belies the fact that he looks like he's a Greek god chiseled out of granite. It's incredible to watch that guy operate on the basketball court. So the funny thing about this is you heard me talk about 4 newcomers, in my mind, could be make up 4 of the 5 starting jobs for BYU with Dallin Hall. Really the only holdover I believe I would start right now for BYU. Kevin Young reserved that right. He was very clear in his post-game comments that no, he had made up his mind with his starting 5. I think he has an idea of where he's going, and that 5. But the nice part is, you saw contributions from literally everybody else on the roster, it felt like, in a positive fashion. Even Trey Stewart, the much maligned Trey Stewart, showed noted improvement in that blue and white game. Now, they've still got a couple of weeks before they really take the court, Carroll College or whatever they're taking on in that preseason matchup. And they also have a quote-unquote secret scrimmage, that's so secret, against Boise State. But I think it's going to be an interesting period here now going from that blue and white game in the interim till they actually take the court again in front of the public. How much things may change, how much things may look different, or quite honestly, how much the same they look as well. That's the interesting part, I think, about this BYU team. But I was impressed with what they showed on Wednesday night. Now, more importantly for many of you, BYU has been slated to finish 9th in the Big 12, according to the preseason poll that came out yesterday. It may seem like really low on its head because I understand it feels a little bit low for the BYU basketball program, considering they finished 5th a year ago. They have brought in all kinds of talent. How could they pick BYU in the bottom half of the conference, albeit one spot in the bottom half, speaking in that 9 spot? The crazy thing about this is it's actually a good spot, in my opinion, for BYU to be. You're not necessarily bottom tier like the Utes, who were picked last, but also you got the opportunity to still overachieve relative to that preseason poll's expectations. I have said this before. I will say it again. BYU is improved by leaps and bounds. The talent they have accumulated on the roster on paper, it is absolutely insane to consider. But the caveat here is that the Big 12 around BYU also upgraded. You have got, I believe, 10, 11, 12 teams in this Big 12 conference that are top 25 caliber squads. The crazy thing about this is at any given time this season, I can envision a scenario where you've got 10 Big 12 teams ranked in the top 25. Evan Mia, if I'm not mistaken, put out his preseason rankings. He had, I think, 9 or 10 Big 12 teams in his top 30. And BYU, I think, was that 9th team, and they were 28th in his rankings. So this is going to be an interesting season, obviously, to track for BYU, but I also don't think it takes anything away from the Cougars as to what you can expect from them, because once again, they still have a major opportunity to overachieve relative to those expectations. BYU finishing 9th in this conference is still, in my opinion, going to be a single-digit seed, 6, 7, whatever you want to say in the NCAA tournament, where you're favored to win a first-round game. That is how good, how deep, how talented, how robust this conference truly is. And that is not to say that BYU can't overachieve, but at the same time, you have to compete literally every night in this conference. It is going to be an insane conference schedule for BYU. I cannot wait to watch it play out. Are there going to be more losses than some Cougar fans may, quote unquote, find acceptable? Maybe so. But understand that this conference, it is the best basketball conference in the country, bar none. Eat your heart out, Big East. Eat your heart out, ACC. Eat your heart out, Big Ten. It doesn't compare to what the Big 12 is here. And I expect BYU to compete favorably in this league, but I think that 9 spot, it's both low, but also I think super advantageous for the Cougars. They could finish 5th once again this year, and once again, compared to the preseason poll, be overachieving expectations. But with the 5th place finish this year, if the Big 12 is as good as we believe it is going to be, are you a 2 or a 3 seed at that point? I know that sounds insane to say, but I'm telling you, this league looks like it is going to be just another level, a cut above literally every other basketball conference out there. I know it warms the heart of a guy like Brett Yormark, who's a hoop head at heart, to watch what's happening with basketball, but it's going to be a lot of fun to break all this down, because it is going to be an absolute dogfight every single conference game. BYU better enjoy the non-conference slate and the slew of wins they're going to pick up there, the 13 games they're going to play. But once it turns the calendar to Big 12 play on December 31st, I'm not even going to begin to predict what it's going to take. I think that teams that could go 7-11 in the conference slate, whatever, I think it's 18 games. So yeah, I think they could still very well find themselves well inside the cutoff point for the NCAA tournament. That's how talented and how robust this league is going to be. And it's going to be fun to track, but at the same time, it's going to be an absolute all-out war on the hardwood as well. And I think Kevin Young and his crew are ready to rock and roll. We'll see how it all goes in very little time. It's crazy to think that we're this close to college basketball season, but still got a couple of weeks before it really ramps up and the season begins in early November. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Cougars. A big thank you, as always, for you guys' support. It absolutely means the world to me. Got stopped by a couple of people down at Black Desert yesterday who recognized me out on the course and said, Jake, I listened to the podcast. It means the world to me that you guys support it as robustly as you do. So thank you for your support. As always, thank you for making it your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.